my friends. Lori Ashcraft here. I'm your host for Viva La Evolution, which is sponsored by Recovery and Resilience Solutions, a training and consulting branch of Crestwood Behavioral Health. And today we have such an honor to be talking with Pat Deegan, who's been one of my heroes for decades, not just years, but decades. And I first started following Pat in, oh gosh, I would say the early 90s, and have learned so much from her. So today, she starts by telling you a little bit about her recovery process, which is very informative in and of itself. You'll get lots of tips and strategies just from listening to that. Then she goes on to tell us about some of the more recent things she's doing, something called OnTrack, and we'll put that up on the screen so you can follow it. And then something that she's been doing for quite a while that's so effective and interesting called personal medicine. And the whole idea of all of this is to empower people to take their lives back and to not just cave into a diagnosis or a medical situation, but to stay focused on who they are. And like we used to say, remember who you are and use your strengths to become all that you were meant to be. That's pretty much what Pat does too. In a very unique and tender and interesting way. So welcome to you all this morning. I know you're going to love this. And let's take a look. Here's Pat. Hi, Pat. So happy you could join us. Our viewers are going to be ecstatic to see you and hear from you. So thanks
for inviting me, Laura. Thank you.
Oh, happy to have you. Yeah. And, you know, I know your recovery story so well because I read everything you've ever written several times. But could you just share a little bit about it, the parts that you think are most relevant?
Well, yeah, I think that, in the beginning, I was a teenager in high school, was really good at athletics and had big plans to become a women's athletic coach. And then senior year hit. It was the break between Christmas and New Year's. And I was on the basketball court practicing with my team. And I began to have a series of changes in how I was perceiving the world around me. I had trouble with depth perception. I couldn't kind of feel with that sixth sense where my teammates were when we were executing drills and plays and stuff. And my coach noticed that I was awkward and uncoordinated. She invited me to go into the locker room, clean up, and just chalk it off to a bad night's sleep. But then over the next series of days, weeks, months, things began to definitely escalate. And for me, I began to hear distressing voices that other people didn't seem to be able to hear, that were saying kind of mean and cruel and humiliating things about me. And I began to be quite concerned that the people around me, something had happened to them in some fashion. I didn't know what, but for instance, my mother would be speaking with me and I'd be focusing on her mouth being filled with screwdrivers instead of teeth and wondering how that all went down. And you can imagine I'm the oldest of 5 in a big Irish Catholic working class family. And so I began hooting and hollering and barricading myself in rooms and frightening my brothers and sisters and neighbors and all. And so not surprisingly, I ended up eventually in a psychiatric hospital. I was diagnosed. I was told, Ms. Deegan, you have a disease called schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is a disease that's a lot like diabetes. Just like a diabetic will have to use, these are the exact words, just like a diabetic will have to use insulin for the rest of their lives, you're going to have to use high-dose antipsychotics for the rest of your life. And then at discharge, I was told to take my meds. And did we mention take your meds?
Yes.
And then the other thing I was told was, and avoid all stress.
About what year was this?
Oh, geez.
Is it
1973 or something?
Early 70s. Because I think people are still being told the very same story today.
Exact.
Yeah.
Exact same story. I do a lot of clinical consulting in developing the OnTrack model for working with young folks diagnosed with early psychosis. And in that work, it's just amazing how many people are being told that before they get to our team, at which point we're able to tell a very different story. But yeah, it's remarkable that it's that myth, that incredibly destructive myth, is still being told out there.
Wow.
And what that meant for me was just I call it a prognosis of doom. It was basically, I was told at the ripe old age of 18, your life, for all intents and purposes, is over. And that I was told, let go of all hopes and dreams and aspirations, no relationships, no school, no work. That's all too stressful. The part that they missed was that boredom and meaninglessness are profoundly stressful. Having no reason to get up in the morning is profoundly stressful. And so that nuanced understanding of, which they didn't have, the difference between the stress that we can respond to that gets us being creative, that helps us, it's a kind of a tension, a challenge, versus the soul deadening kind of stress of going nowhere, doing nothing, and being seen as a chronic schizophrenic. And it's a terrible thing, and it is an iatrogenic wounding, meaning it's utterly unnecessary. It is absolutely unnecessary and scientifically unfounded to say that those of us with these diagnoses don't move on to get to the life that we want. They act as if human resilience ends at diagnosis. And then the focus becomes, you're broken. Our job is to fix you, stabilize you, maintain you in that stabilized kind of chemical hibernation forever. Stay out of trouble.
I remember that story about your grandmother every day asking you if you wanted to go to the grocery store, and you were so medicated and spirit broken that it took a long time for you to say yes and go along.
Eventually I did go food shopping, and I credit my grandmother with having that kind of hope-filled orientation of her heart, where she was inviting me each day, Patricia, step over the threshold of this. I've opened the door, but I can't carry you over it. Come, let's go food shopping. And it was such an important thing, I think, because every time she would invite me, it was a reminder, oh yeah, there is a world out there, and I'm not of it anymore. And I'd say no and shut down, but she kept coming back. And what was the beauty of it, I think, was her humility and her ability to recognize, I can't do this for you, but I want you to come.
Yes.
And one day I said yes, and I did do it. I did do it, and I pushed a shopping cart down the aisle of a grocery store. And I can honestly say that was the first active step I took in my recovery.
Yes.
And that old saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, really, really holds true. And I think that we often think about recovery as these kind of, as a change process that is revolutionary, rapid turning points, all this stuff. And I think the truth is, for many of us, it's an evolutionary growth process. It's very organic. It's more garden than volcanic change,
Yes. Yeah. Another story I remember is, and I don't know if this was the first doctor or some doctor down the way, and you were in his office and he was telling you that you would never get better. And you said, I wanted to leap across the desk and strangle him, but then I knew that I shouldn't be doing that.
That's so true. Lesson number 1, do not reach across the desk to strangle your shrink. It won't work.
But then you said, I walked out and I thought, actually he kind of did you a favor in a way, because you walked out and you said, I'm going to get over this, or something like that. In other words, you were able to turn that message of doom into determination.
Absolutely. I think of that particular time meeting with him. It was the same psychiatrist that I had through a couple of earlier hospitalizations as well, and was seeing him outpatient. And I understand it as sort of the kindling of the embers of what was left of my dignity, just came roaring up in this, what I call angry indignation. I love that word indignation because, of course, it contains the word dignity. And so it came up, and then I had to squelch it because I knew I'd get in trouble for getting quote agitated. But when I did get outside the office, this thought came into my mind, and the thought was, I'm going to become Dr. Deegan, and I'm going to change the mental health system so no one ever gets hurt in it again. That came to me, and it's funny because it gave me something to organize my recovery around. You can't organize recovery around nothingness, around a vacuum. And I went right back and sat in a chair and smoked cigarettes and drank high-test Coca-Cola, but inside something had shifted. So you wouldn't have noticed it from the outside. And that's why I always say to people, let's take real care when we're around people who appear to be withdrawn and very shut down, because I think very often it's a protection of extreme internal fragility. That if I had shared that dream that some might call a delusion of grandeur with my team, and they had poked a hole in it and said, let's start with baby steps, I'm not sure I would have come back from that.
Yeah.
So I kept it a secret, this dream, this vision I had. I call it my vocation, my calling. I kept it a secret for fear that it would be destroyed. And they tell me that was crazy too. That was just another delusion. And so, but inside something had shifted. And so I say to people, when we see people in this very shut down place, remember probably extreme fragility internally. And that we tend to say this person is a hopeless case. This is a hopeless person, as opposed to saying, I, the observer, am struggling with my own feeling of being able to be hopeful or to hold the hope for this person.
Oh, that is so good.
Yeah, it's not that he's hopeless, she's hopeless. It's that I'm struggling to hang on to my hope.
No.
Yeah. So, they just saw it as another sign of chronicity that I just continued to sit there. But eventually I did take that single course in English Composition 1 at Massasoit Community College here in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And that was the very first step on that journey, only to discover after getting my doctorate in clinical psychology that I single-handedly was never going to change the mental health system so no one ever got hurt in it again, that it would take our collective hearts and minds and souls and talents and gifts to be able to turn this boat around.
Well, that's true, Pat, but your contribution has been seminal and critical to turning it around. But what you've been able to show us and teach us in your own life story and the work you do is how to do that and how to be community. So I just don't want to let you not say that.
Sure.
You've been amazing. Just
Thank you.
Still are amazing.
It ain't over yet.
No, it isn't. I'd like to hear more about, I can't remember what you called it, but the work with the early onset folks, and also something about the personal medicine that you've worked on. So either one, or both.
So here I am all the way, years later now, and I am and I have been running a small company since about 2000, Pat Deegan and Associates, and I've got a great crew of employees that work with us, and we are, I like to say, a small but mighty company, and our mission is to protect human dignity by building tools and technologies that support people having a voice and a choice with their care providers. And that so we offer everything from common ground software that people use prior to going to see their psychiatrist to prepare to participate in having a voice and a choice in medication decisions, to an online recovery library. And we also offer certified personal medicine coaching and personal medicine tools, which I'll say a bit about in a minute. And the on-track piece for me has been an opportunity back in 2009, invited by Lisa Dixon, who at the time was conducting a major study here in the United States called the Recovery After Initial Schizophrenia Episode RAISE. It was funded by the National Institute of Mental Health, and the idea was to do studies of young people diagnosed with psychosis to understand better how to support folks. And then that morphed very quickly into a services research grant. And our job was to create a model, some whole new way of thinking about in the public sector, working with young folks, 14 to 30, who are diagnosed with early psychosis. What would be a model that could be used in the public sector? So I'm not talking about setting up Soteria House, just to say, right? But a team-based model. So we came up with a model, and the thing that I just love about this model, you know, it includes a peer specialist on the team. It includes a supported employment and education specialist. It includes a psychiatrist, a nurse, social workers, psychologists. But what makes these teams remarkable and the model remarkable is that when we meet a young person who may be experiencing their initial psychosis, our question and the way we connect with folks is, how can we help you with work? How can we help you with your job? How can we help you with relationships? We start with that connection to what matters to you. My experience was the focus when I was a patient was, what's the matter with you, Pat?
Exactly, yes.
And we shift the focus to what matters to you. What matters to you?
I haven't heard that before. I really
shift
like
that focus. And the results are extraordinary.
I
Young people within a year are returning to school, to work. Young people are getting a life. Young people are significant reduction in suicide, which is a high risk with this particular population, and recidivism, return to hospital, goes way down. I'm not saying 100%, it's not a magic cookie or something, but it really, it's very gratifying to see it working in the real world.
You know, the makeup of your team sounds a lot like an ACT team. That you actually do is very different than what an ACT team. An ACT team is focused on, as you're saying, what's wrong with you and how can we control you.
There you go. I agree. So the thing that is just so exciting now is that this on-track model, it's called coordinated specialty care, has been adopted literally internationally. We have a lot of different sites around the United States that are using the model, fidelity scales. So that's a piece of work that I still consult clinically to the teams and help develop the peer specialist workforce for the teams. In New York State, I think we've got about 30 teams in New York State itself. But I do that like as a consulting gig, you know.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy it. It's very meaningful to me, as you can imagine, given my bit. Yeah, it's lovely.
But if somebody wanted to do that with you, how would they get started?
Oh, all you have to do is contact me, pat@patdeegan.com.
Okay.
And you know, I do a lot of consulting.
Okay, all right. So contact you, and then it sounds like be ready to create a team with those particular disciplines on it. And
oh, well, what I'd say about that is if what you want is to adopt the OnTrack model, you go to the OnTrack website, and they have something called OnTrack Central, which is the central training body of OnTrack. And they train sites all over the United States to implement the OnTrack model with fidelity.
Okay.
So they're located at the, you just look up OnTrack New York, NY, OnTrackNY.com, and it's all right there for anybody who's interested in adopting the model.
I'll put that up on the screen so people can
it's good stuff.
Get it. Yeah, it sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
I didn't know about, I've heard about it, but I didn't realize how widespread and how effective it was. So I'm so glad.
Can be quite effective. And I think part of the challenge is always, like you said, people are still really being terribly drugged up into a stupor, polypharmacy, a lot in these acute inpatient units where it's in and out, in and out, in and out. And so part of the whole form of working with it is helping to connect with young people who've been traumatized in this way, subdued in these ways, and working on the whole deprescribing process with young people so that they can take a much, much, much lower amount
Yeah.
As we adopt a shared decision-making model in OnTrack,
Yeah. Oh, good. I
where
love
the
that
young,
model.
where young people are guiding the decisions that they and sometimes with family members are guiding the decision about meds. So it's a good model for sure.
I interviewed a person a couple of months ago who's young. I think he might be 23. And he when he tells his story, it sounds a lot like what Stanislaus Grof would call a spiritual emergence.
Mhm.
Of seeing some lights and some visions and hearing voices, but not negative voices, like supportive voices.
Mhm.
And of course, he got put in jail and hospitalized and so on. So it caused me to get all my old Stanislaus Grof books out and try to see what was really happening there and try to change the way we look at his story. He would be a wonderful candidate for your program. I don't know how to hook him up, but I'm going to find out.
Well, you're in California and you've got a statewide network of EpiCal, but they have not formally adopted the OnTrack model statewide in California, which is a shame.
Yeah.
Places like in Tennessee, Ohio, etc., but not in California.
What did you say the California one was?
EpiCal, EPI, Early Psychosis Intervention, EPI dash California. That's the name of the, and they're out of UC Davis, EpiCal.
Oh, okay, good. That's real close to me.
Yeah.
I'm
There's
going
some great people. I do work with them as well.
Well,
I can work with them. Yeah.
you just touched on personal medicine a little bit.
So again, my work very much comes out of my own experience and that of others that I've heard from. And if you can believe it, probably a year and a half after my first hospitalization, I was still sitting around and no one up to that point had ever told me, Pat, there are things you can do to help yourself. So that my whole orientation, and I still believe it's very true today, where lots of us go to mental health services and it's like, I'm broken, fix me. And it's a very passive process. It's like when we go see our primary care doctors.
Yeah.
I don't know what the fireworks are about.
I don't know either. I've never had that before. So
I'm magical.
Okay,
I'm glad you can see it.
There you go.
In any case, so for me, the passivity, and I think for many people, was a terrible issue and kept me mired in a passive stance, feeling like I had no power in my own life and waiting upon the experts to fix me. And I found that was a terrible trap. And indeed, what I discovered was that by using, I'm going to date myself here, but at the time it was a Sony Walkman, which was a personal analog music player, right? That had a headset with it and was portable. If I listened to tunes that I liked on the headset, then it actually helped with the distressing voices. And this was like, wow, it's like the earth moved under my feet. There was something I could do. No one had ever told me.
Yes.
And the more I increased what I was figuring out how to do, the more I was able to work with my doctor to decrease the antipsychotic meds. And what I discovered and have come to call personal medicine are these sort of natural, self-righting, resilient strategies that we use to manage the challenges we're experiencing and to create wellness in our lives. So personal medicine are about the things that we do. But the big thing about it is that it comes from within. It can't be prescribed for us, so that my psychiatrist can't prescribe personal medicine for me, because within me, there's a healer within. And this is a very powerful message, because many people believe that, well, I'm a schizophrenic, I don't have a healer in me. Right? I'm a bipolar, I don't have a healer in me. And so part of personal medicine coaching is helping people get in touch with that inner healer, with that natural resilience, with that self-righting capacity, and discover the things I am doing and then build upon that. And some people want to just kind of poo-poo it and say, well, that's just coping strategies. But these are not just coping strategies. Coping strategies are terribly generic. What these are strategies that come from within me that I modify and make work for me. So examples of personal medicine might be anything from walking my dog every morning gives me a reason to get out of bed in the morning. And that's really important because I struggle with depression, right? And then later I discover that walking my dog around the neighborhood as I struggle with depression also connects me to neighbors and community members. And this enlarges my circle of feeling belonging. And that also has healing powers. So we help people recognize these personal medicines that they are doing, and then to build and expand upon them. So the coaching process becomes a very kind of, we call personal medicine coaches disruptive innovators, because what we do is we disrupt the message that a pill is what you take.
Yeah.
And we say, no, medicine can be what we do too.
Yes.
And that for many of us, finding the right balance between what we do and any pill we may take opens a pathway to recovery. And importantly, we say personal medicine is not what I take. And what we mean by that is it's not having a cigarette when I get nervous. And so we work with people, or another one is it's not eating vegan. The work to carefully prepare with love and, real thought, a vegan meal for nourishment, that can be powerful personal medicine for some people. You see what I'm saying? But the fact that it's vegan in and of itself, that's something I'm going to ingest.
Yeah.
I'm going to take it. So that wouldn't meet our fidelity for personal medicine. Personal medicines are very much about what I do now, and not about what I take. So it's not some concoction that I throw together of a little St. John's wort and a little NyQuil before bed. That's not personal medicine. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, and I'm just taking in what you're saying and relating to it. And what's coming up for me is personal medicine, as you says, comes from within. Like I need to get in touch with the part of me, whether it's my spirit or let's call it my spirit for now. That part of me that is above and beyond my physicality, and I can somehow tap into that amazing strength and pull it forward and learn from it and trust it. How do you get people to find that?
I have a very, very simple method that we use. Basically, we've got two major resources that people use. And one is what we call a personal medicine worksheet. So when things get rough, what do you know how to already know how to do that helps? And then say how it helps. It's a very simple kind of formula.
Yeah.
Then we also have an entire suite of collections of what we call personal medicine cards for various challenging. So maybe one of the challenges you struggle with is oppression, right? Maybe you're a trans person and you've been struggled and bullied and your whole life, and so you're beginning to work through some of that. What might personal medicine for me be? Sometimes to help people get started, we might offer them a strategy, and then they take on the back of the card and they personalize the strategy to make it their own. So here would be an example. This is a personal medicine card. And this particular personal medicine card is for distressing voices, for challenges related to distressing voices. So on the front of the card, it said it can be helpful to think of our voices as an early warning system, trying to protect us from harm. Seen from this perspective, voices may be trying to help us. Using our compassionate self, we can thank them for the warning and tell them we'll stay safe as we go about our day. Then on the back of the card, I can personalize that. So my voices warn me, keep your eyes down. That's the threatening warning. My compassionate response that I want to try when that starts.
Yeah.
I'll definitely be careful. Thank you.
Ah,
You're warning me. Thank you.
So good. I love that.
Yeah, so we've got them for all kinds of categories, distressing voices, troublesome beliefs. We have got them for negative thinking, anxiety, food cravings, because so many folks are, really struggling with medication side effects that induce intense food cravings, etc. So it's an interesting, and we've got a worldwide community now of, people, Pakistan, and the UK and South Korea and Australia and US, Canada. I mean, it's very exciting. And we come together, we share resources, and then we also train trainers so that people are able to begin training other people in their countries or their state in these practices. So it becomes cost effective for instance, well, we partner with some large managed care companies, right? And they train trainers who then train the rest of their workforce in personal medicine. And, it's interesting because it's open to medical providers, it's open to families, it's open to peer specialists and other clinical professionals. So we get quite a mix of people too.
Well, I think that mix is good because then we start agreeing on things and talking about things together. It's not siloed that way, and we don't see ourselves as being on different teams or separate or whatever.
And what's really cool about the training that we do, some of it is self-paced learning with online videotape modules, but a lot of the courses of the class for becoming a certified personal medicine coach are live Zoom calls. And we really focus on discovering our own personal medicine. So you might be the psychiatrist in the group, or you might be the psychologist in the group, but we're all working on our personal medicine because we got to walk the walk before we talk the talk, right?
Absolutely. I interviewed a psychiatrist a few months ago now. Florian Berkmeyer is his name. And he talks about, are we wounded healers or are we wounded wounders? And this comes up for me listening to you because we all need to do our own work. And be a good channel of love and truth for people, or we're just passing our own wounds on in various ways. I really thought it was a wonderful challenge for all of us.
Yes, it is. Nice way to put it.
Yeah, I loved that too.
Wounded wounders.
Yeah.
Something to think about.
Well, what else have you been up to? As if that's
excuse me?
As if that's not enough.
No, always more work to do. But my latest creation that I'm very, very excited about is called medication empowerment. I have, as we said earlier, I get upset, angry to see people still being profoundly over medicated and way too much polypharmacy going on. And it's about, too often, it gets to be about behavior management, managing people. And we've all heard about medication education, nurses provide med ed, and all that. I said, what about medication empowerment? And so what I said was that I basically created this amazing curricula that's all these very short 3-minute, 5-minute animated videos that are meant to go directly to those of us who are receiving services that help us think about medications and what it is we're doing in a very different way, and empowers us to speak up, to have a different kind of conversation, particularly with psychiatric care providers, whether they're nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, or psychiatrists. I could share an example of one if you were interested.
I am, yes.
Take a look. May I share my screen?
Sure.
All right, let me just take a quick, like I say, these are very, very short. So the first video, animated video in the series, is called So you've been diagnosed with a mental illness, which is where it all starts, right? With the
Yes.
diagnosis. And
Yes.
so in this medication empowerment curricula, the first video that you get to see with a related worksheet, and I'll bring it up. So you are diagnosed with a mental illness. You're not alone. Many of us have faced mental health challenges and have passed through them to live a wonderful life. You can too. For a minute, imagine you are a flower. There you were, living your life before you were diagnosed. You had your friends, family, your hopes and dreams. Maybe you were working or going to school. Perhaps you had a hobby, played sports, or cultivated your spirituality. All of these made you the unique, never to be repeated person you are. But then you got diagnosed with mental illness. The diagnosis seemed really big, almost like it defined you. Those other parts of you probably seemed smaller or like they had disappeared. When things feel this way, it's really important to remember that you are a person, not an illness. You are not a bipolar or a schizophrenic. You are more than that. All those parts of you are still there. You are not an illness. You are the one who is strong enough to make your journey of recovery. And you will need to mobilize and depend on all of these amazing parts of yourself in order to make your journey into the life you want for yourself. Your spirituality is still there to guide you. The people you love and people that you will meet along the way will be there to support you. Your work and school and hobbies will help you heal as you make your passage. And don't give up your hopes and dreams. They are the stars that will guide you as you navigate your recovery. Your diagnosis does not define you. It's just one aspect of the wonderful person you are. You can live your life, not your diagnosis. Now, try taking a deep breath in through your nose. And when you are ready, slowly exhale. Congratulations, you are on your way.
I love that. That is so good. You know, the first time I saw you do that flower was about 1997 in Tucson. And it was really powerful then. But this animation just really brings it to life in a beautiful way.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So imagine being, in a state hospital, and that state hospital has invested for peer staff to work with medication empowerment curricula, these videos and the worksheets that go with them, and hearing this message as opposed to the one that I received back in the day, right? And then the videos as they move forward include things like various challenges that we have when it comes to taking meds, like the meds have changed me in ways I don't like. Very common challenge. I feel over-medicated. Another very common challenge. I'm not motivated to use the pills. My husband loves it when I take them, but I don't want to take them, they don't do anything for me. So these challenges, people get to, first of all, learn, hey, I'm not the only one to have the challenges, but then they also come with worksheets that help me work through that challenge and talk about it. A huge part of this is, as we know, Lori, the peer workforce is expanding here in the United States as well as around the world. But of course, the danger is that peer specialists drift and are assimilated into clinical culture and become junior social workers. And what I love about, and in many states, they actually have prohibitions against peer staff, certified peer specialists, actually talking about psychiatric meds with people, which I think is horrific. I think with a structured curricula like medication empowerment, there's a whole new role for peer specialists here in terms of supporting people and having a voice and a choice in making decisions about my body. My life, I'm going to go in it.
You know, you're hitting on such a good point because, you know, we do a lot of peer training still. And once peers get hired, if they don't have something peer-like to do, then they're at risk of assimilation. But if they have tools that they can use that are distinct from what other people do, then they're less likely to be pulled into that junior case manager model.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I hear
we've
you.
tried to equip them, but it still happens. You know, I just want to just think about my own experience when you're talking about medication. My whole, probably even as a child, I struggled with anxiety and depression because I grew up in pretty challenging conditions. And so I started taking medication when I was probably late 20s. And the antidepressants in those days were pretty, had a lot of side effects. But I just felt better. I felt like I could do my job, you know. I wasn't struggling to just pull myself up to that line. I could actually function above it. And but so I was on antidepressants for 35 years, and the ones that work with anxiety. And every once in a while I would try to get off, and the side effects of getting off were so hard, I would go back on.
Yeah.
Finally got off, and then looked back on those 35 years. And I have to think, you know, I needed some medication because there was no one there. I mean, we're talking 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you know, that period, 70s. Yeah, probably that far back. Well, at least 80s, 90s and up. There was no one to talk me through any of it. And just like you say, I just turned myself over. Oh, give me another pill. But if I'd had someone to show me that flower, you know, and help me remember who I was, I would have needed a lot less medication for a lot fewer years. Just didn't have it. It wasn't until the 90s, the mid 90s, that I could even talk about being a mental patient myself, being one of those people.
Yeah.
And then once I could talk about it, I had friends, I had, you know, kindred spirits. And I always felt that they were my kindred spirits, but I couldn't be part of it. You know, I could just watch it. And that was really the beginning of my healing. And then I finally got off of it, and I have bad days, you know, that are painful, but they pass because I've learned the stuff that you're talking about, not as articulately as you do, or as no formal kind of process. But I can so relate to what you're saying about remembering who you are and holding on to that. Is it so important when you're attacked with something?
Yes.
Yeah.
I hear you. And you know, meds can be, like you say, there are times where medications can be very helpful.
Yeah.
But to think that meds are going to deliver us to wellness is really a falsehood that's promoted through the pharmaceutical industry with billions of dollars in advertising.
Yeah.
Here we are with little personal medicine videos, and here we are with our peer support trainings and stuff, and we're small but mighty. And I think the word is out. I think more and more.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the pressure to use these drugs with younger and younger children is also very disconcerting, and you know, and school systems becoming de facto, and you know, institutions for psychiatric care, and it's really still a lot of work to do, Laurie. It's not over.
I know.
Right?
Well, you and I are still here, Pat. We're
Yeah,
we're still doing it.
yeah. Yeah, there's still work to be done for sure.
Yeah. Well, I have just enjoyed spending a little time with you so much. Every time I enter your presence, I learn a whole bunch of new things. So thank you so much for sharing what you're up to. And yeah, I just love it. I love the personal medicine stuff. I love what you're doing with early, I don't know what to call it, early experiences.
Yeah, early psychosis specialty care book is the name of it. Anyway, it's all good stuff on track and all.
No,
Yeah. And thank you for sharing. And it's been a pleasure to be on your show.
well, pleasure to have you. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
And I just wish you the best in all that you're doing. Sending you strength and love and tender care.
Thank you so much.
Okay, there you have it. You're going to want to watch this 2 or 3 times, I think. So grateful for all that Pat's done and for her willingness to share with us today. So keep all these messages in your heart and move them forward as best you can. Remember, we're all in this together. We're all learning from each other and moving ahead. So thanks for being partners in recovery, and I'll see you next time.